the Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon, and I've been investing in property for over 20 years. And if you're an active landlord or planning your next property investment, this podcast is for you. Last week, I revisited the idea of replacing a salary with a buy-to-let portfolio. And this week, I'm going to look at an updated set of figures for using an HMO portfolio to replace a salary instead. Now, these updated versions are follow-ups to episodes 80, 82, and 86 that I recorded a few years ago with Stuart. Now, despite not liking hearing my own voice, I actually enjoyed listening back to those old episodes as I prepared for this one and last week's episode as well. There will be links to those episodes in the show notes, or of course you can scroll back through the podcast history of whatever podcast player you normally use. But I really do recommend going back to those for a listen. Of course, the numbers aren't quite relevant to today, and that's exactly the whole point of these update episodes. But a lot of the content, a lot of the thought processes, and a lot of the discussion that Stuart and I have around how you can think about these investments and building a portfolio to try and replace salary is still very, very relevant. Now, if you have just been back and listened to the relevant HMO episode, then you can probably skip the next couple of minutes. But during those couple of minutes, I am going to recap the sort of key numbers from 4 years ago. Now, rather than a countrywide average HMO, we decided to go with an area that Stuart knows well and considered an HMO in Plymouth. As an aside, it seems Stuart may be onto something with Plymouth. Do have a listen to episodes 271 and 274, which are obviously quite recent episodes, if you want to find out a bit more about what I mean there. Now, back to HMO investment in 2021. We looked at spending £250,000 to buy an existing HMO. And then we were looking at spending a further £25,000 on refurbishing it to bring it up to standard and to make it as appealing as possible to new tenants. Plus, there were just £12,000 or so on other purchase costs. So legal fees and I think we actually rolled license fees into that one as well back then, even though I think that probably should be a sort of ongoing cost. But anyway, that's what we ended up with 4 years ago. There was also a huge 85% loan-to-value mortgage in the mix that gave a total collection of purchase costs, so the deposit plus the things I just mentioned about refurbishment and things, of £75,000. And that was to produce an income, a total rent of about £2,200 per month. On the expenses side, being an HMO, there are obviously quite a lot more than with a single let buy-to-let, as I spoke about last week. So we had, first up, the big one, £800 on mortgage interest, and that was at 4.5%. So that was very high by the standards of 4 years ago. Then we had £150 for maintenance, £200 on utilities, £140 on council tax, £50 for other bits and pieces, including broadband and some other things. And then if you were wanting this to be a portfolio that you could build up over time while you were still working and things, which was sort of our assumption, there was also needed to be an agent on top of that. And we ended up with monthly costs of about £1,700. And that, of course, gave us £500 left as profit each month. So to replace the £30,000 salary that we were looking at back in 2021, you would need 5 of these HMOs, costing £375,000. And you would have an ROI, a return on investment, of around 8%. Now, that was in 2021. So what's the situation like now? Unfortunately, I don't know if this is normal for Plymouth, because it's not an area that I look at regularly or in much detail. But there are a lot of HMOs currently on the market in and sort of immediately around or around the town centre or city centre of Plymouth. Some are being sold with tenants in place, others appear to be vacant. So there seems to be a good range. Some are clearly in the student area, but others look like they've been sort of set up for more of a professional let as well. There's also a range of sizes. There are plenty of 5 beds, which is what we're going to look at today because that's what we looked at 4 years ago. So I'm going to compare sort of like for like there. But there are also slightly smaller ones and quite a few larger ones as well. Now, to find these really quickly, I used the HMO sourcing list that's available in PatMed Deal Finder. And if you're curious, you can sign up for a free trial. There's a link in the show notes, and you can very easily use the enhanced property search to just choose HMOs, put in the postcode for your area of interest, and there you are, straight away a list of HMOs for you to investigate further. Now, browsing through the list of 5 beds, the asking prices ranged quite a lot, and there were some that were under £250,000. This is asking price, so the actual purchase price could be even less than that. But they've ranged all the way up to over £350,000. So that's quite a big gap there. Also, some of them had been on the market for quite a while, including some of the cheaper ones too. But there were also quite a lot that have come onto the market in just the last few months. So I don't know if that's an uptick or if more of the older ones have been selling as well. The average asking price is definitely under 300,000. And for today, I'm going with a purchase price of 275,000. That might be slightly high, I think, from looking at the average of what's available, and then sort of allowing a bit for an offer under the current asking, but I don't think it'll be too far off. So we'll go 275,000. With many HMOs on the market, and quite a few that look to be in good condition and with tenants as well, I'm going to work on the assumption that we can pay slightly more, and hence the slightly higher than strictly sort of average purchase price. But I'm going to build into that we can spend a bit less on the refurbishment. So 4 years ago, we were looking at quite a lot on refurbishment to actually get it up to a really good standard for letting to a professional HMO or letting as a professional HMO. This time around, I'm only going to allow 15,000 for that sort of initial refurbishment work. While an 85% loan to value mortgage might still be possible, I think they're harder to get these days and certainly would cost more. So I'm only allowing for a 75% loan on this example. Now, interestingly, using figures from my recent chat with our regular guest mortgage broker, Simon Glastonbury, you can see the link to the most recent episode with Simon in the show notes again. HMO mortgages aren't that much more expensive than 4 years ago. I'm allowing for a 5% interest rate in the example today, although with a 3% fee, but that's only 0.5% more than we were looking at 4 years ago. That's very different to the change that we've seen in buy-to-let mortgage rates, for example. A big difference in the purchase cost, however, is stamp duty, and that's now looking to be £17,500. So that is quite a big chunk. So overall, the slightly higher price, lower refurbishment cost, higher stamp duty and mortgage fees, or perhaps I should say, and lower loan to value mean that our investment has risen a lot, and it's now looking at being £110,000 in order to be able to buy and prepare HMO for market. On the rental side, it looks like rents have increased, but only modestly, and probably not by as much as inflation. Similar to the purchase prices, there's a large range of room rates available in Plymouth, from under £500 per month all the way up to around £800 per month. However, the large majority for non-ensuite rooms, which is the type of property that I'm looking at here, seem to be around £500 per month. Some less, some slightly more, but that seems to be sort of the settled average or median that I was seeing. For reference, these are professional lets I'm comparing against. They're not student lets that I was looking at. So student let costs may well be different. Of course, costs have definitely risen since 4 years ago, with higher utility bills, higher council tax, higher maintenance costs, both for materials and for labour, and pretty much everything else, really. So my estimated monthly costs are now £1,150 plus £860 of mortgage interest. The mortgage interest itself hasn't gone up very much, certainly not as much as we might have expected, but everything else has gone up quite a chunk. So with the increased rent, this leaves us with about £490 profit per month. So that's actually still about £500. So going into this, I thought that was going to come out worse. But it's actually not too bad. I mean, it's not good because, of course, we've had a lot of inflation at that time, and £500 now is not worth as much as £500 was 4 years ago. But it could still have been worse. Just look at the buy-to-let example from last week, for example. So £500 a month is a sort of cash flowing profit out of each of these HMO investment properties, potentially. Although, of course, because we're putting a lot more money in, the return on investment, the ROI, is now only 5.3% compared to a much healthier 8% 4 years ago. We're also now trying to replace a higher salary. 4 years ago, the average was 30,000. Now the average is 38,000. So rather than needing 5 investment HMOs to reach our target, we would now need 7. It's actually just over 6 really, but of course we can't buy a fraction of an HMO, so we would of course need to buy the extra one, making it 7. And of course, each one of those is taking that larger amount of cash to actually purchase. So our investment requirement has gone from £375,000 in 2021 to a massive £770,000 today to build an HMO portfolio that could replace a salary of £38,000. Of course, that's more than double the upfront cash that you have to put into this endeavour in order to achieve that. And it is a large amount of cash as well. We might be able to reduce it a bit, perhaps by finding an 85% loan-to-value mortgage, or by rolling the mortgage fees into the mortgage amount itself. But these would probably cost us higher interest rates and hence reduce the monthly profit and hence perhaps mean we actually need more properties in the first place. So I'm not sure that would actually work out better overall. So can you still replace a salary with an HMO investment portfolio? Yes, the monthly cash flow still works okay, and it could be done. You'll need a lot of cash to put into the portfolio though, around £770,000 if you're building this portfolio in Plymouth at least. You're also unlikely to be able to build this portfolio with other people's money. 4 years ago, we concluded that might probably be possible if you weren't actually trying to extract profit for a salary for a while. However, now with just 5% return on investment, you're unlikely to be able to borrow that from anyone, from a private individual at that rate. So it just wouldn't work. You wouldn't have enough profit to be able to pay all your bills and pay back your investor as well. So maybe a buy, refurbish, refinance and rent approach could work better. But that's going to be for another day. So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the potential for HMO investments and using them to build a portfolio that could replace a salary. If you have any comments, you can email me on show@thebusinessofproperty.com. And I look forward to speaking to you again next time.